Tonight, our guests in the Levin Performance Studio are the members of Black Tulip, soprano Josephine Stoplenburg, Mirja Lorenz, recorders Philip W. Cerna, violas da gamba, and Joel Spears, lute and theorbo. Black Tulip is a Chicago-based international ensemble specializing in music of the 17th and 18th centuries. Tonight they brought us a program called Court, Convent, and Stage, Redefining the Early Modern Woman. Before we begin, let me mention that video of tonight's performance can be found at WFMT.com or WFMT's Facebook and YouTube channels. Our artists have chosen to open their program with music by the innovative 17th century Venetian composer and virtuoso opera singer, Barbara Strozzi. She is said to have studied with one of the most significant composers of her time, Francesca Caccini, and she was clearly influenced by Monteverdi. She published an abundance of music in her lifetime, suggesting that her music was well appreciated in its time. Much of it used texts on the theme of love, which is the case in the music we're about to hear, one of the best-known arias from the eighth and final collection of her works, published in 1664. It is Che si può fare, which in loose translation begins, "What can be done if heaven has no peaceful influence to soothe my sorrows?" And it's all about the heartache and despair one can suffer as the effects of love. Here to perform it now are Josephine Stoplenburg with Joel Spears playing theorbo and Philip W. Cerna on viola da gamba.
This
To open tonight's live from WFMT broadcast with Black Tulip, we heard music by Barbara Strozzi, Che si può fare. We're going to hear music now by Isabella Leonarda, who lived from 1620 to 1704. She was born in Novara, which is near Milan. She was a composer, a singer, a teacher. She lived a very long life and produced over 200 works. More than 20 collections of her music exist: motets, sacred concertos, masses, music for vespers, and she was the first woman to write sonatas for violin and basso continuo. She came from a very prominent musical family, and prominent in general. They were church officials, knights, civic leaders, and she eventually became Mother Superior at the Collegio di Sant'Orsola, which was a convent in Novara, and she was called the Novarese Muse par excellence. We're going to hear the Sonata number 12, which is one of her best known, and it has 7 movements, marked Adagio, Allegro e presto, vivace e largo, spiritoso. There's an untitled movement, then aria, allegro, and finally veloce. Music by Isabella Leonarda. That was music by Isabella Leonarda, the Sonata Number 12 by that composer, performed by members of Black Tulip. Next, we're going to hear music by Francesca Caccini, the first of two pieces, actually, that we'll hear by her tonight. And this is called Lasciatemi qui sola, or Leave Me Here Alone. And I'd like to talk to Josephine Stoplenburg about this. And maybe we should start with talking about this composer and her rather remarkable circumstances, in the sense that she was in a very musical family. She had a good deal of help from her father, who was very prominent, a very prominent composer. And she was known as the songbird, because apparently her voice was something to behold.
Sure, she was quite a thing, and I can relate to the whole family thing because I'm from a family of all musicians. So
there you go.
I really love that story about her. She had just a wonderful education. You know, her father taught her, and she performed with her family members. And she ended up composing music for courts around Italy and all over Europe, so she was very successful. And this particular piece, Lasciatemi qui solo, is very sad. So if I do not have you a little bit depressed by the end of it, I did not do a good job. But it's so beautiful, it will be worth it. It basically describes a story of the woman sitting on a rock and saying, I want to end my life. Friends go away. Even animals fly away from me, swim away from me. Winds be quiet. I will just breathe out my last breath. And it's so beautiful with the oboe because you can go incredibly soft, almost whispery. It's a little bit in between singing and recitative, sort of spoken singing, and what makes it very intimate feeling, very natural.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, actually, let me jump in real quick.
Sure.
So Giulio Caccini, one of the things that he said about music is that sound is important, but far more important in music is the text and the rhythm. So it's a very different approach from later kinds of music that you might hear on FMT. So it's this very early, sort of very text-focused music.
Lasciatemi Quizola, music by Francesca Caccini, sung by Josephine Stoplenburg with Joel Spears on the theorbo. Congratulations, Josephine. You've gotten the whole audience crying at this point.
I promise there'll be more happy stuff coming soon.
I did want to ask you about the trills that you employ in that. And I mean, that certainly adds to the effect, but I would imagine they're rather difficult to achieve just the way you want.
Yeah, so in Baroque time, one of the ideals for singers was to have a beautiful, sweet sound and to display great vocal agility. And one of the things was this throat thrill, so
Yeah.
and all kind of other agility, like was just very popular to sort of display the voice in that way. And it was easy at that time too, because the instruments have a warmer sort of sound, or a little lower and a little softer. So that kind of agility is just easy to achieve when everything is just a little bit softer.
Mm-hmm. We're moving on now to a French woman, also very prominent in her time. In fact, she was one of the few women composers of her time, I believe, who was held in great esteem in a contemporary way. In fact, some people said that, I guess at that time, she was ranked second only to Lully, which is pretty amazing for a woman at that point. Philip, you want to talk about Élisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre?
De la Guerre was a very accomplished harpsichordist, and in addition to lots of works for voice and continuo, she also produced a great body of works for keyboard and chamber music for multiple treble instruments and basso continuo. And there's not a whole lot of music for, say, solo viol that comes from women composers that we know that has survived, and her chamber music is among some of the most important work that includes and specifies the viol as one of its instruments that it uses.
Do we know which sonata we're hearing? Because you're very specific here, as I notice.
We're hearing the Sonata number 1 in A minor.
Okay, and it has 4 movements. They're marked grave, presto adagio, allegro largo, and allegro aria affettuoso. the Sonata Number 1 by Élisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre. We heard it performed by members of Black Tulip. Playing recorder was Mira Lorenz, playing viola da gamba, Philip W. Cerna, and playing theorbo, Joel Spears. Josephine Stoplenberg, our soprano, will be with us after we take a break, and when we come back, we'll hear more music by Isabella Leonarda. We're back in the studio now with Black Tulip, and we're about to hear some more music by Isabella Leonarda. We heard a sonata by that composer earlier. And Josephine, you promised something a little bit happier. This is sort of, although...
no, it really is.
It's about going to heaven or longing for heaven, and yet it comes off as being a very joyful, wonderful
Exactly.
thing.
It says there are many pleasurable things on earth, as we all know, but the joys of heaven surpass all of them.
Right.
The flowers never fade, etc. And what she does beautifully is a lot of word painting, which is basically describing a concept or a feeling or situation with music. So in this case, it's the rising up. So the music literally goes up.
Right.
And you hear that a lot. It's a very happy piece. And it also shows that she probably had some really skilled musicians in the convent where she worked, because it's a pretty virtuosic piece. And we really love it. It's just such a happy piece.
All right, it is music by Isabella Leonarda, Surge l'exanima.
Sorge, 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 o felix anima, o Christis onsa nobilis, fugit terras anima, a celum leta sorgebi, fugit estas anima, acilum deda suscipe elevare, acilum deda suscipe elevare, accelera, elevare, accelera. In hoc mundo ribelli, immixtis und finero delici, lux fugat organicini, in momento petit voluptas, extrema gaudi, occupat fletus. In momento petit voluptas, extrema gaudi, occupat fletus. Fuggi a celum aspera, fuggi a celum aspera, ubi campis olympices flores semper rident, nunquam tavisciunt. Semper rident, semper rident, semper rident, et nunquam tavisciunt. At Venetia regna conspira, ubi caudia, ubi amores, ubi caudia, ubi amores, in difficilem stribubit pax. Ubi caudia, Creeples viscera, creeples viscera, dulcidine, dulciatus, creeples viscera, viscera, dulcidine, non frosta laborat, qui fuggi mondana, qui diserit vara, ut habet te. Qui fuggi mondana, qui diserit vara, ut habet te. In vano morirat, qui tormenta, uccide contenta, ut veret fi, ut veret fi. In vano morirat, qui tormenta, uccide contenta, ut veret fi. Qui tormenta, uccide contenta, ut veret fi. Ut veret fi. Alleluia.
Surge o Felix Anima, Rise Up, Blessed Soul, by Isabella Leonarda, sung by Josephine Stoplenburg. We also heard Joel Spears on theorbo and Philip W. Cerna on viola da gamba. We're going to turn next to music by the only princess, I think, on the program. This is the Princess Anna Amalia of Prussia, who was the daughter of Frederick William I and the sister of Frederick the Great. And Joel, you're going to talk with me about this, I believe, a bit, so move your mic into place.
Sure.
And first of all, I suppose we should talk about the fact that musically things weren't very promising for this woman early on.
That's right. There is that story of her being pulled by her hair out of the room by her dad, the emperor, because he didn't want her studying music.
Yeah, so. He apparently hated music, and he just made it very difficult for her to do anything in that respect. So after he died, that's the point at which she was able to really get into it.
Absolutely, and we've really fallen in love with this piece. And of course, this was written in the 1770s, and what's interesting about that is the instruments we have here now playing for you. At that point, you could even say we're in their twilight. They were being sort of set aside for other instruments. The gamba had still a few composers for it, as did the lute. This is a 13-chorus German lute from around this time. And the recorder was still used as well, but being surpassed by the side-blown traverse flute. So that's what we're going to be playing on this piece. Really virtuosic piece. Maria really gets to shine with her. I think it's called a voice flute, right? Can you hold that up for the camera? There you go. Yeah. So basically, it's designed to fit the range of a regular flute. It's a recorder that.
Yes, of a silver.
Yeah. Yes, silver flute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, Philip has his bass viol there.
Okay. Let's hear it then. This is the Sonata in F major by Anna Amalia from Prussia. That was music by Princess Anna Amalia of Prussia, who lived from 1723 to 1787. She composed that sonata as a gift for her brother, who was Frederick the Great. She composed that piece in 1771. And we didn't mention before we heard the piece that she was also quite famous as a librarian or a collector, and her library, by the time she died, held more than 600 volumes of music by the most prominent composers of the Baroque era. And it played a huge role when the Bach revival came around in the 19th century. We're listening to Black Tulip performing this evening on Live from WFMT. They'll be back in a moment, but we take another break now. We're going to hear more music now by Élisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre. We're going to hear a cantata, Semele, and I suppose the moral of this story is be careful what you wish for, because, well, you can tell the story of the myth, I suppose. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's the story of Semele, who has a thing with Jupiter, Zeus. So they have a love affair, and she's just not really sure if he actually is the god that he says that he is. So she asks him, please, can you reveal yourself to me in your godly splendor? And at first he refuses, but in the end he reveals himself, and no mortal can see a god and live to tell the tale. So there's lightning and thunder, which you will all hear in the music. And Semele is partly really pleased that he really was a god, because that tells her that she really is quite something too, to be selected by this god to be a lover. And she says, I was able to please a god. This is really wonderful. But then the end of the story is that it's better not to mix love and ambition. It's kind of the moral of the story. And the funny thing about these cantatas is you always go, as a singer, in between the role of the narrator and of a character. So I kind of switch in between being Semele and being all emotional and frustrated and overwhelmed by the splendor of Jupiter, and then the narrator telling what we all should be doing.
Before we hear it, though, I neglected to talk to Joel about what's happening with Black Tulip over the next few months. What is going on? Huh?
Yeah, well,
any new projects in store?
Yeah, we do. In fact, working on a mini tour of the Upper Midwest and various parts. Not all the dates are set yet, so what I'd advise the listeners is to go to blacktulip.org.
Okay.
Stay tuned there and get ready for some excitement in the coming months and next year.
All right. And speaking of excitement, Semele.
There we go.
The cantata Semele by Élisabeth Jacquet de la Guerre. We're listening to the members of Black Tulip this evening. We're going to hear music of Francesca Caccini once again. But Joel, before you get up,
Yes.
I wanted to ask you how this particular program came to be. So
Yeah.
put your theorbo down gently and tell me.
It's very roly-poly on the bottom, so you have to... It's round on the bottom, so when you set it down, you have to make sure it doesn't roll.
I noticed.
So this Black Tulip has always made a point of giving stage time, performance time to composers that we like that maybe people don't know well enough. So we've always made a point of presenting music of women composers. However, in this case, our friend Misha Zubko, the composer, asked us to put together an all-female composer program for his series up in Northfield. And so that was the reason for all this coming together.
Great. And I'm glad it did.
Yeah, so are we.
Josephine, this is the last music we're going to hear tonight, and it's more music by Francesca Caccini, another point of view on love.
Yes, it's a song about love, but not about the whining or the problems of all kind of lovey-dovey love. It basically says, whoever asks me if I want to be in love, I've been there, I've done that, I do not want it anymore. And if someone tells me, no, you need to be in love, it's the most essential thing in life, I just tell them, you don't know what you're talking about, I have done it, and people who live for love are just crazy.
Okay.
Just so you know.
All right. It is Que Desia Disappear. Whoever wants to know what love is. Music by Francesca Caccini.
Chi desideri saper che cosa è amore, io dirò che non sia se non ardore, che non sia se non dolore, che non sia se non timore, che non sia se non furore. Io dirò che non sia se non ardore, chi desideri saper che cosa è amore. Chi mi domanderà s'amore io sento, io dirò che il mio fuoco è tutto spento, che io non provo più tormento, che io non tremo né pavento, che io men vivo miglior contento. Io dirò che il mio fuoco tutto spento, chi mi domanderà s'amore io sento. Chi mi consiglierà che io debba amare, io dirò che non vo più sospirare, né temere né sperare, né temere né sperare, né avvampare né gelare. Io dirò che non vo più sospirare, chi mi consiglierà che io debba amare. Chi d'amor crederà dolce il gioire, io dirò che più dolce amor fuggire, né piagarsi al suo desire, né tentar suo sdegnire, né provare il suo martire. Io dirò che più dolce amor fuggire, chi d'amor crederà dolce il gioire.
That was music by Francesca Caccini. Chi desia disappear. Whoever wants to know what love is. And that brings us to the end of Court, Convent, and Stage, redefining the early modern woman. Beautifully performed for us tonight by Black Tulip. Soprano Josephine Stoplenberg, Mirja Lorenz, recorders, Philip W. Cerna, violas da gamba, and Joel Spears, lute and theorbo. And if you'd like to learn more about the group, we urge you to check out their website, blacktulip.org. And a reminder that video of tonight's performance can be heard at WFMT.com or WFMT's Facebook and YouTube channels. Our thanks to these fine artists for being with us tonight. Thanks also to my co-producer, Louise Frank, and to our music producer, Max Lebien. And we had assistance tonight from Ella Princeloop. Next week, as our series continues, we'll welcome cellist Alexander Hirsch and pianist Victor Santiago Asuncion. I'm Kerry Fremkin, host and producer of these programs, hoping you'll be with us again next Monday night at 8 for more music and performance live from WFMT.